everybody, and welcome to another Top 5 board gaming video. In this game I'm going to be talking about the most tedious games that I've ever played. Before I really get started, I would like to say if you haven't done so, please check out my social media pages as well as my Patreon, where you can say and do all sorts of really cool stuff over there. That said, moving on to tedious games, what do I mean by this? I mean games that become less fun because you keep doing the same thing over and over. Now there are some games like war games where you're doing micromanaging and keeping track of all the little details and all that stuff, and it's part of the fun for those games. It's part of the thing where it's like, yes, I see myself progressing, I see myself doing something. But with most of the games I'm going to be talking about here, you really don't see that, or you see it to a much lesser extent. So I'm really excited to get into it, and more importantly, see what you guys have to say. As always, let me know in the comments below, what are games that you have played that you find unimaginably tedious? What games just are not fun for you anymore because you just find them to slow down and chug along really slowly, whatever it happens to be? Let me know. But with that, we're going to get started with my number 5. At number 5, I have Time Stories. This might be a little bit of a surprise to you guys, and it should be, because honestly, I really love this game. However, as I've played more and more, and some of the scenarios, I really didn't enjoy some of the specific scenarios. And so it just became like, oh, when are we going to be finished with this, right? And that's what tends to happen with games like this, where you have like episodic adventures and stuff like that. And it's just kind of like, oh, we already did this, we already tried this, we already went here, and it didn't work, or whatever, or like we have to try something new or find something new, whatever it happens to be. And so Time Stories, some of the things have that really, really badly. Overall, I really love this game. The group I play with, overall, we really enjoy it in general, but sometimes there are specific aspects that we're all just kind of like, oh, that is not good. There are some aspects where specific people really don't like it, and mostly it's because of that tediousness where we have to restart again and redo all of this stuff. But with that, Time Stories, my number 5. At number 4, I've got Arkham Horror. This is particularly bad if you add in a bunch of expansions to it. And again, this is like where you're just moving around a map, you're trying to close the gates, you're trying to defeat the bad guys, you're trying to do all this stuff. And a lot of times this game just really seems like you're never progressing. It seems like nothing is ever really changing, nothing's ever really getting better or moving the game forward. It just sort of seems like you're almost spinning your wheels. And it can be really frustrating, it really can. I love this game, I really do, but ever since Eldritch Horror came out, I really don't play this too often. I do on occasion just because I do still enjoy it and it is unique in the way that it works, but I prefer to play it with people who really know what they're doing and who are used to the game's style, because it is a unique thing that is a little bit different from a lot of other game types. I still enjoy it to a good extent, that's why it's lower on this list, but still, it can be really frustrating, especially setting it up and then putting it away, and again, if you have expansions, it's even worse. Arkham Horror, my number 4. At number 3, I've got Diplomacy. The particular aspect for this game is the negotiations. This game takes anywhere between 4 to 8 hours, essentially, just really depending on the group that you're playing with. The biggest part of it is the negotiation. Now, don't get me wrong, negotiation is by far one of my favorite mechanics to see in board games. However, a lot of this game is all just negotiation, and then subsequently going back and reneging on those negotiations. And it's really unfortunate because one of the major pitfalls for this game is that you can't win collectively. You have to have a single winner. So that means that, like, curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal. It is inevitable because you can't win together. So it just becomes an exercise in tediousness, because like, there's no reason to create alliances other than you know they're going to be short-term and things of that nature. It can get really frustrating, well, really slowly, because the game takes a long time, and that's another reason why it's really annoying, is just because it's such an investment, you would hope that it would sort of pay off a little bit more, essentially. But with all of that, Diplomacy, my number 3. At number 2, I've got deck builders in general, with Legendary being the prime example. The problem with deck builders comes with the fact that you've got so many expansions, you mix all the cards together, everybody's making their own deck, mixing all the cards together, and just everything is mixed. So the problem comes during setup and teardown of the games, essentially. Because while the gameplay itself is generally not that big of a deal as long as everybody knows what they're doing, with things especially like Legendary as well as the DC deck builder, where you have a bunch of different card types that aren't supposed to go together end up together, then you have to separate them all back out. Not to mention, if you're dealing with multiple expansions, it just makes it that much worse. And so you almost spend more time setting up and tearing down the game than you do actually playing it. So it gets really, really annoying. And that it's not that I don't like them, it's just that I often find it to be not extremely worthwhile. Obviously, if everybody helps out, then it's a lot easier, but still, it's difficult. It's really difficult, and I've got people, I know people who have basically all of the expansions and are like, yeah, we're playing with all of them, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to do that. It's just not nearly as fun for me. Legendary, DC deck builder, particularly deck builders in general, my number 2. At number 1, I have Talisman. That's right, the Magical Quest game. And the fact is that when I first played this game, I honestly loved it. It was one of the first real hobby games that I played, and I had a tremendous time with it and played it on occasion, not super frequently, but now I'm just like, wow, this game kind of sucks. And it honestly does, because the fact is it uses dice roll to move. It's random movement. You've got random cards that will give you random enemies, maybe an item. Maybe you'll turn into a toad. Who knows? You have no control over it, and it is tremendously frustrating. So you can end up just going around and around and around and around the outside and not even be able to progress in the game because the dice aren't cooperating with you. And it just becomes tremendously frustrating. Adding in the expansions, I've only played with a couple expansions and only like once or twice. I barely remember it. But if memory serves, it helps a little bit, but not too much. And on top of that, it makes the game ridiculously enormous, kind of like with Arkham Horror. Arkham Horror by itself is already pretty big, and Talisman is as well, but then when you add expansions, it just exponential increase practically. Absolutely insane. But overall, Talisman, it's a fun game. I do enjoy it. I think it's a cool concept, but unbelievably tedious after a little while. My number 1. Well, everybody, that's it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this top 5 list of tedious games. Again, most of these are just based off of doing the same thing over and over and hoping that the game sort of progresses type of thing. But again, I'm really curious what you all have to think. What do you consider tedious in gaming? Do you just not like doing the same thing over and over, even if you're getting different results and progressing distinctly? Do you want to have something that's really different or really unique? Like, you know, like with worker placement, stuff like that, where you can do something different every time. I'm really curious, as always. You guys know I love hearing from you. Let me know in the comments below. But with that, thank you very, very much for watching, and I will see you next time.